Hey, what's up? It's time for a nice, timely video looking at my favorite 20 albums from 2016. I originally was going to make a blog post about this, and I had started writing it, and then school got really busy, and I just didn't get a chance to finish it. And I don't know, it just never happened. And I felt bad because 2016 was a really fantastic year in music. I think one of the greatest that I've ever lived through. And it was a pretty rough year in terms of geopolitics, stressful personally, and there's lots of unfortunate things happening all over the place. But in music, I found a sense of solidarity and a sense of hope that I was able to go out into the world, soundtracked by these albums, and really feel like I could actually get things done in that garbage fire of a year. So I wanted to honor that. I really wanted to talk about these albums. And even though no one cares anymore and it's 2018 and maybe you've all forgotten about these albums, I think even more than it should be that we return our attention to them and discuss what makes them so great. Normally I try to do top 15 lists for albums, but I bumped this one up to 20. Partially because usually I make these lists like in the January of the year after. So it's all just music that I had found during that previous year. But now there was the entirety of 2017 where I was still, of course, listening to things from before 2017 and finding out about some new releases and stuff, or getting more into albums that I had kind of neglected before. So I figured, well, why not bump it up to 20? It really is just that good a year. There are 20 albums that I think really are worth talking about. And plus, with this video format, man, it's so much easier than writing. Oh, God. Writing a blog post takes forever, and you think about every single word. And here, honestly, I just hit record. I make up this little slideshow of the album covers. That takes like a little bit. But then after I hit record, it's just gonna take as long as these videos are. And whatever I say about these albums, great. And whatever I forget, oh well. And hopefully I just encourage you to check them out if they sound at all interesting. Anyways, all of that said, let's talk about our first album, at number 20, Rihanna's newest album, Anti. I had never been like a huge Rihanna fan. I liked a lot of her kind of mainstream hits. I didn't like some other ones, but overall, I did like her, but not so much that I would go out of my way to listen to the albums in entireties. But this one really struck me. I think there's a really sophisticated sense of this project as an album that often these pop stars don't really seem to care about, and it's more just a vehicle for the singles and for the most diehard fans. But here I really do get the sense that she wanted an album experience, and even like the big successes, like Work, which is kind of the centerpiece of this album, being a colossal global mega hit, feel well integrated thematically and in terms of musical motifs. But then that being kind of the centerpiece and the accessible point for radio play and such, she actually gets a lot more experimental on the songs on either side. The opener with SZA, with this like awesome, heavy, abrasive beat that kind of feels like Odd Futury. Other kind of the song called James Joint, which is just this like really wonderfully indulgent song about smoking weed. And then in the later half of the album, she kind of gets really in this kind of spacey emotional place, with the Tame Impala cover that she just does an excellent job on, really showing her vocal chops. And then the last few songs hitting these successively more and more heavenly and transcendent feelings. It's just really great. The transitions in these last few songs, like, really did emotionally affect me, much more than I would have thought on an album that I was hoping would just have some nice catchy tunes. So yeah, really impressed. Check this one out. Even if you're not a diehard Rihanna fan, you might become one after this. This is Dave, a very young guy from London, a grime rapper. This is one of the grime projects I really got into last year. One of kind of the introductory things that made me start really liking grime. He kind of has he wears his kind of youngness and juvenileness on his sleeve, I think. Even in this album cover, it's called Six Paths, which is a Naruto reference to the Sage of Six Paths. He's got the eyes of the Sage of the Six Paths in this depiction, and it's showing like the six people he could be. This like Phoenix Wright type lawyer, or a good student, or dead, jail, out robbing, doing stuff like that, or rapping. And of course, we see that he's landed on his rapping. And like with a lot of other grime music, this is like very emotionally indulgent. It doesn't really have kind of the hallmark of Atlanta rap, which is often a kind of ennui almost, a certain cool detachment from the world. Dave is like very invested and tries very hard on all of these lyrics, all of the wordplay. There's things on this project that I think I would have found very cliche and distasteful in other rappers' works. Long, totally a cappella segments talking about his fears, the classic putting in a conversation between you and someone on the phone at the end of the final track. But here they really hit me, and I'm not sure if it's just the freshness of the production and like his British accent and stuff, or the infectiousness of really thinking like this is the youth, this is like a young kid out there really making it. Who am I to deny the truth and validity of his feelings and his story? Or I really just do think it was really so well done that it kind of transcended the cliche, not cliche dichotomy. Yeah, check it out. And on top of that, on top of these more kind of serious, meaningful tracks, there's some just straight up bangers too. He's really got a good sense of what makes a great popular hip hop song. Just really well finessed hooks and stuff. Highly recommend it. Check it out. It's pretty short too. This is Danny Brown's Atrocity Exhibition. Danny Brown's career being crazy. I don't even know how to begin encapsulating it. And each new chapter kind of almost betrays your feelings towards the previous chapters. That on Triple X 30, his first album, you saw this, well, his first like major album, sorry. You kind of got this sense of he's hit 30, he's kind of putting it out there. This is like his final breath as a rapper. It's do or die. But the tension of that is kind of undercut by the fact that you're listening to it and you knew it was a success, and you knew that he can make it as a rapper now. So it kind of contains its own victory. But then in Old, you find that victory that you were so happy about is sort of subverted, and that he's still distressed and he still feels like he can't be happy, and that he's turning to like substance abuse more and more to kind of stabilize himself. But again, you kind of get peace by the end, that you're like, well, he's still here, he's still kicking. But with this one, again, it's undercut. So it's named Atrocity Exhibition, which is named after there was a series of short stories that then Ian Curtis of Joy Division named a song after on their album Closer, which is one of the most brutally depressing rock albums ever made. Ian Curtis, of course, later committing suicide, and he just described his performances and his time in the band as this atrocity exhibition, like that this encapsulated his entire engagement with music production. That basically you're out here suffering, you're out here bearing your exposed and beaten soul, and it's just an exhibition, and it's just people come and see your misery on stage. So again, you kind of are like, oh geez, like every time you feel like you can close the book on Danny Brown and feel happy, kind of like his character arc has reached a happy conclusion. It's just like, no, he's still suffering. And his suffering, though, really does make some pretty damn good music. um, in the end, this atrocity exhibition is one that you would be well served to attend. I think it's really affecting, powerful music. This is his first album after being signed to the legendary electronic label Warp. And you can kind of feel that bleeding through the production. There's kind of some IDM-y type stuff, some really experimental and out there beats, which works so well with his very experimental and out there flow, which is sometimes yelping, sometimes rough and rugged. One of the best vocal chameleons in the game, up there with like Young Thug, I think. The subject matter, as I hinted at before, is pretty damn brutal at times. Other times, it kind of has this like manic excess that is really kind of dance in the water and not get wet and not get wet. You get kind of like pumped up on it, and then you're just like, wait a minute, no. I don't know if this should be affecting me in the way that it is. So yeah, a really unique, one of a kind album in terms of hitting that weird emotional space between. Actually, I shouldn't say it's unique in that regard, but it's unique in how it does this, that it hits that space between getting really turned up and excited and feeling frail and brutal and beaten down by the relentless weight of life. It's got both. It's got both an explosive Technicolor. So yeah, check it out. I can't believe... Yet again, it's like, at this point, I just know that whatever album comes out next, its major thesis is going to be like, do you think you understood me from that previous album? Did you think you really had a grasp on the manic course of my life? But at the same time, I don't know. He's out there playing Persona and stuff. He's just a guy like anybody else. All right. What's next? Ooh, Kendrick Lamar's Untitled Unmastered. So in 2015, he released To Pimp a Butterfly, which is going up on like the Mount Rushmore of hip hop, I'm sure. It's an album that I don't think we will ever hear the end of its critical praise and analysis and stuff. But during the kind of run up to that album and the promotion for it, Kendrick Lamar did a lot of live shows where he did not play any of the songs on that album, but just other new songs that kind of just disappeared in the wake of To Pimp a Butterfly. And my understanding is that it was like LeBron James or some other basketball superstar in an interview told Kendrick, like, I want to hear those songs. When are you going to release those songs? And then like a week later, he releases this, Untitled and Unmastered. These are just rough cuts that were, I think, taken out of To Pimp a Butterfly just because they weren't as a good fit aesthetically. Sometimes you can kind of hear the same motifs, this kind of jazziness, this feeling of really free-form poetic rap. But at the same time, you can see how they're not really able to be inserted into the narrative of that album, that they wouldn't really fit the overall concept of that album, but they are still great. He raps like a man on fire in some of these, and just these like really amazing swirling images of apocalypse and self-destruction and triumphing over that, and the aforementioned jazzy beats are just on point, even more than into Pimp a Butterfly, which is like a very kind of complete project feeling. This has much more of kind of like a session feel that you really feel like you can imagine all of the instruments playing and Kendrick in the studio, and it has like the kind of feeling of those old jazz albums where it's just like one live performance. It's just capturing this one moment and the energy that was there at that time. And you know that if they had tried to perform it again, it would have been different. But that just makes it all the more rare and special. Yeah. And even just the aesthetics around it, like this totally blank kind of green cover. I had another word. I was going to call it like mauve, but I don't think that's actually at all the color I wanted to say. Olive. But it really has this sense of creative energy to it that I think even more than To Pimp a Butterfly. It's almost like To Pimp a Butterfly, he was putting the entire force of his will into creating this masterpiece, which of course is a huge crowning achievement. But here, in this sort of residue of just this creative energy, when it's just sort of happens to be being released as a byproduct, it's still this good. That's almost more impressive, I would say. Anyways, yeah, fantastic. Again, highly recommended. And then Young Thug's major project of 2016. No, my name is Jeffrey. For a little while, he really did change his rap name from Young Thug to Jeffrey. Or no, my name is Jeffrey, like that being his entire name. But then it just turned out that this was the album title's name, and there was that very confusing trailer where Young Thug is in jail and they keep telling him his name is Young Thug, and he's going, no, my name is Jeffrey. And it's like he's been arrested for not calling himself Young Thug. Like, it didn't make any sense, but it was fantastic. And then when the album came out, you probably could also say, oh, it didn't make any sense, but the album is fantastic. Everything from the fact that all of the song names are named after people that inspired him in some way, but it doesn't really make sense that there's a track called Wyclef Jean, but then Wyclef Jean himself is a guest on a song called Kanye West, and there's a song called Guap that doesn't have Gucci Mane on it, but then Gucci Mane is on another song, and you're just like, doesn't really make any sense. There's a song called Harambe, where Young Thug raps like a monster, or like maybe one of those Delta blues singers like Leadbelly or something. It's just inhuman. Like it's jaw dropping when you first hear it. On other tracks, like the aforementioned Wyclef Jean, it's much more of like a dub reggae feel. Again, just kind of jumping head first into these new styles for himself and sounding so amazingly comfortable. Of course, it wasn't until 2017 that we saw the absolute pinnacle of this creative project when he dove into country music with Family Don't Matter, but whatever. Yeah, no, this is a really impressive project. Almost every song just veers off an entirely new direction, but seems so comfortable there. The guest spots are on point, all of the aesthetics around it. The music video for the aforementioned Wyclef Jean video is insane. You definitely look it up. The album cover is fantastic. I think totally unlike any other rap album cover, where the rapper is pictured in like a real high fashion type dress. I cannot think of that ever happening before. So yeah, fantastic project. I think one of the pinnacles of his career, up there with like Barter 6 and stuff. I think that'll be it for the first part. We'll chunk this into 4 segments for total indulgence. And we'll have almost a week of 2017 music. It's going to be a blast. Okay, see you in part 2.